The one, the only, the classic Halloween.
I think he'll come back.
Halloween, the night he came home. Rated R.
The night he came home.
All right, thank you all for being here. This is Liquid Blake's Movie Takes. I've got my special guest, Mara Jade, with me, Jade Shadow. And I've also got another little surprise. We have Casey Jones from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I'll let Mara introduce herself.
I just, this is as close to something like sexy I could find before Halloween, so I wasn't dressing completely up. So
No worries.
we'll say, like, we'll say it's like my, like, actual, like, my, I don't say 50 Shades, but close enough.
Very good, very good. Well, anyway, I'm going to take this off because I don't think I can quite see through it, and I can't really talk through it. But I'm back. Well, anyway, yeah, that was my Halloween costume. I was going to get I'll get some photos and probably post them on Twitter and stuff. Yeah, so thanks for being here. Happy Halloween to everyone in America and to the people in Australia, or the people in New South Wales for another 10 minutes or so, and the people in other parts of Australia, probably about half an hour to an hour, I'd say. You've gotten to Halloween end, so it's a pretty good time here in Australia. America, I know that you guys go absolutely nuts for it.
Oh, yeah, we go a lot more nuts than you guys do.
Oh yeah, compared to what we do, it's probably night and day. Like I remember I've been trick or treating, I think once or twice in my life, and it's the hardest part is finding houses that sort of have anything, like either decorations or like the candy or lollies and chocolates and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's the hardest part. But in America, like, because growing up watching a lot of American TV and movies, they were always usually my favorite episodes, the holiday episodes, and specifically the Halloween episodes, and then the Christmas episodes, and just watching the like the effort you guys go to, it's huge.
Yeah, there was I think they took it down, but it's like not on my street, but it's like a few streets over. When I was heading out running errands, there was actually a house with a full figure of Michael Myers in the front yard.
Oh,
and I think they must have taken it down. So I didn't see it recently, but it's like he was like, yeah, standing out front. I guess he scared the kids a little too much or something, because it is, when I say full figure, I mean it actually does look like Michael Myers standing there in the front yard.
I can imagine. And the way he stands as well, it would be it'd be very if you just sort of saw it out of the corner of your eye, if you're just, you stopped and you just were startled by it, I could definitely see you could take it for the real person.
Yeah.
Yes. I think Lethal will be joining us soon. He messaged me just before. I forgot to reply to him, but if he is listening, just jump on whenever you can if you're still available. Yeah, so today we're here to talk about the movie by the title Halloween. One of the weird things about it is it was the first movie to ever have the or major American release movie, I believe, to ever have the title of Halloween in it in any capacity. And of course, since then it's caused probably a thousand other ones to have Halloween of some description in the title, but I mean, 78. It's not really unheard of, but I always thought that was a little bit funny that, especially horror.
Yeah, I
the
mean,
horror genre.
I'd have to look, but yeah, I don't recall. I mean, I'm not coming up with anything off the top of my head of movies that had
No,
Halloween in
and
the title
yeah, and
before
for
then.
the genre of horror, especially, that's I always found that really weird. It was like it's kind of it was like, as this movie proved, it was a match made in heaven, because it's just the perfect setting. It's you've got everything. You've got the atmosphere. You've got the people out, sort of partying. You've got the people all dressed up. You've got a lot of people, as in this movie, like babysitting, and you've got people out of their homes, and it really does just set the scene perfectly for what is a quintessential horror movie.
Yeah, I think the original title, or at least the original working title, was supposed to be something like Babysitter Murders or something like that, which I would not have resonated today as much as just simply Halloween. It's like,
No.
just a day alone invokes like the supernatural, the ghouls, ghosts, things like that, the atmosphere.
Yeah, you get everything that comes with it with the title. It's it is one of those ones, where the babysitter murders, or it doesn't have that lasting effect, I don't think.
Yeah, it'd be. I mean, I'm not like, I have nothing against like the Slumber Party Massacre movies or whatever, but like it would kind of just fallen along those lines if amongst those those types of movies, whereas like now it stands above the Slumber Party Massacre movies.
Yeah, it could very much just be thrown into that pile of the teen slasher genre, with a lot of other ones, and not have ascended past that in any sort of form whatsoever.
Yeah.
But I'll just wanted to take a quick say hello to the people in the chat that are here already. We had a special message from Ira I saw before from Legend of the Brave Bard. And I'm sure he's happy now that you've got the little cat head, cat eyes on.
Yep.
And Jock Nerdy's here as well. Thanks, Jock. I saw some of your Twitch streams and stuff you've been doing in America. Looks like you guys are having a lot of fun streaming with Lyndon, and I saw you with Biggles and a couple
we're sending
others.
it back to you.
Yeah, unfortunately, Lyndon has to be sent back to us in some capacity.
I mean, I tried using my connections to get him to send to like a Siberian prison, but they wouldn't take him because
just a quick detour on the way back to Australia.
Yeah, pretty much. I just love that sign. Hello, Maz. I might assume, Maz, since you didn't tag me in the Get Good at Call of Duty tweet, that means I'm good. Are you admitting that I'm better than you?
Yeah, and considering considering I've never played the game in probably 10 to 12 years, I'd probably still be better than you, Mozza. That's for sure.
I saw some of his ratios. Like, even I'm better than him at times.
Yeah. Well, that's Mozza. Curious, seeing as you are in the chat, Mozza, have you ever seen this movie, Halloween? It was from 1978, a year before you were born, so there's a good chance you haven't. No, you can't get good.
So if I can't get good, that means I am good. It means I can't get any more good. So that's what he's saying. Yeah, he didn't tag me because I'm already good.
Yeah, you've cornered yourself in a conundrum there, Mozza.
Yeah.
You've seen it? You have seen the movie. The 2006 version? But yes, anyway, so we'll go into a little bit of a brief background on the movie itself. I had some notes here. So as far as independent filmmaking goes, especially for the time, this was a I just saw that then, Mozza, thanks for that. It's one of those ones where, like, the very first movie I did on this channel was Chopper, and that was one of those one of those movies that you don't really see a lot anymore, where they're shoestring budgets, but they go on to be highly successful. You see it a little bit in the horror genre still. Some of the Blumhouse ones, and I'm not the biggest fan of them. They do have reasonable budgets and they make their money back, sometimes through deceptive marketing. But that aside, it's Halloween was one of those ones. $300,000, up to $320,000 if they had to. If you add I think it was an extra 20 they had to pay to get Donald Pleasance to come on board, and then you've got the script written in 10 days off really scraps of an idea. As Mara was saying before, the original title of the movie was something like The Babysitter Murders, and that came from I believe the producer Irwin Yalbins, and he basically just gave John Carpenter the idea of we've got this we want a movie about someone that's killing babysitters on Halloween. Well, I think the Halloween night bit came later, but originally it was just we want to see a movie about Halloween. Babysitters being killed. Later on, they changed it to they added the Halloween night bit, and then it went from there. But a script that was written in 10 days, and it's not just one of those ones where, like, you hear a movie was thrown together quickly. Like, they solidly worked on that idea. It's not like it's a hastily knocked together script poorly. It was hastily written, but it was still well thought out in their intentions of what they planned to do with the idea. You've got I believe it was just over 20 days to shoot the film, and John Carpenter did the music in I think it was 3 days, but it was definitely just under 5 days to do the music.
Yeah, it
to the
like
film.
3 or 4 days, and he did like a 5/4 scale.
Yeah, it's pretty monumental task when you think about the work that went into doing such a well, well drawn out movie into what is something that is really a maybe I don't know, an action scene in some big budget movies today. You could see go for 20 days to shoot, and you've got an entire movie that has stood the test of time. It was $300,000 initial budget, and it went on to gross, I think at the time, I'm not sure, not increasing for inflation or anything, but around $55 million. So it became the highest grossing independent film of all time.
I looked at some trivia. It said that would be equivalent to, well, this is from 2008, so I'm not sure what it'd be with today, but in 2008 it would have been equivalent of 150 million.
Yeah, which is like even at the $55 million at the time is just huge. And like relay off the fact that it was only a $300,000 budget, and that's that you can see why they kept making sequels, I guess, with that sort of turnaround. But something that you don't see anymore. I mean, I think it was the highest grossing or the most successful independent film of all time. I think the one that actually surpassed it ended up being Crocodile Dundee, but I'm not 100% sure on that. And then I know much later on, I believe the Blair Witch Project surpassed both of them. And then I think possibly there is one that has since then as well, but I'm not 100% sure what it is. But yes, I mean, for the time, that's huge.
For the time, like getting to even 10 million would have been like just monumental for a $300,000 budget, and then you take that like 5 times that.
Yeah, and especially it was just an idea kind of thing, and I think John Carpenter, they've said he was paid, I think, about $10,000 for the movie. I believe Donald Pleasance all up was paid about $40,000 for the movie, and then a lot of the people that worked on the movie worked on it for free because it was such a shoestring budget. I believe it was, yes. And that could have been one of them that surpassed them in the 90s, but I don't know if Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles did end up surpassing Crocodile Dundee. But then I definitely know that Blair Witch was way up there later on. But that's another one, and I don't know if you saw it at the start, but yes, I am dressed as Casey Jones minus the mask because I was scared I was going to suffocate live on stream, and that's something I don't really plan on doing. Unless I'm cosplaying as Michael Hutchins or something, but that's a different stream.
So especially since we'd have to send like Moz or something, so he'd be closer to you, I guess, to check on you if you did.
No, that won't be happening. Mozza will not be knowing my location. Thank you. Yeah, it was a random thing I had, and then I was like, I can actually use this for to do something with it, like a stream or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're the one that's dodging, Mozza. When are you going to stream on Twitch again with your 2 monitors that don't work? So that's sort of briefly a background of the production and the sort of almost no resources they had to work with. It was
it kind of just goes to show you that granted there definitely has to be talent both in front of the camera and behind the camera, but it just proves you don't need a huge budget, in particular for the horror genre, because all you need is atmosphere.
Yeah,
and I think that's what the studios forget nowadays with all the poorly timed and utilized jump scares. Because I was telling Steve this during my our top 10 horror movie killers, monster slashers discussion, that jump scares in themselves aren't bad if they're properly set up and used, and that's all dependent on the tension and atmosphere built up, and that's what works in this film.
Yeah,
but especially when you hear the music start and that tells you Michael is close, or something is going to happen, and it just slowly builds it up versus just a loud noise and something just jumps out on the screen. That's not it doesn't work. It might get you to jump initially, but then it's that was stupid versus I don't want to see what's going to happen next.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I was going to say when you said that's what studios don't realize now. You don't need a big budget, and a lot of it's the atmosphere. That's true, but also I don't think a lot of the filmmakers today, or even after Carpenter's generation, could do what Carpenter did with such little. That was his sort of playground almost. It was always his movies had more atmosphere than really any other movies at the time. His everything and they talk about it a bit in the commentary for this movie. It's out of necessity almost. They don't constantly cut. There's not a lot of coverage. There's not a lot of quick cuts in the edit or that sort of thing. It's because they didn't have time to film all that stuff. They only really had time to film those wide shots and to capture the action from sort of the A to B without stopping. And I mean, that's a lot of Carpenter, and that's a lot of, I think, necessity he learned on Halloween by doing it. But a lot of the filmmakers today, I don't know if they can do as much with as little as what Carpenter did, especially in such a his horror was never always the same. He always branched out, and I don't think a lot of the horror filmmakers, especially today, do branch out as much. They very much stick to a very specific type of movie that they do, and back then, especially, Carpenter really paved the way for a lot. But he he almost made them too good that a lot of people couldn't follow him when they did, especially like when you watch the sequels and stuff. Like a lot of them don't live up, or well, none of them live up to the original, but a lot of that is Carpenter's personal touch on a movie. Because I mean, Halloween isn't my favorite Carpenter movie, but Carpenter is my favorite director.
So, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I can see that. Like there are, I guess, filmmakers nowadays that do in a way come close. I can't remember the one's name who did that Lights Out short that was like picked up for like a like a full length movie. I can't remember what his name is, but he did the short first, and then it was like, I guess it won some award or some competition. So the studio stepped in and said like, we want you to make a more feature length film on this. Like he showed, at least in the short film, potential for that. But I'm blanking on his name. But I'm blanking on his name.
No worries. Yes, I'm not too sure either. But yeah, I mean, yeah, there are filmmakers today that do a good job with what they have, but I don't know if they're the type of filmmakers that are going to have the sort of career and legacy that Carpenter had. I mean, I don't even know if any filmmaker today will, because of the way movies are made and sort of made to be disposed of and move on to the next one. But yeah, it is very much a lost generation of filmmakers. Mozza, you've been up for too long. You need to go to sleep. But yeah, I mean, yeah, and going back to it, there's a funny story, like with the necessity of being at low budget and adding that atmosphere. The continuous long take to start I think it's the start of the movie, where it's Michael's perspective as he's going in and he's about to kill his sister. It's basically every take they did there was just running into the end of the film. So each roll of film would, I think it was back then, it was something like 4 minutes, maybe even up to 12 minutes. But each take, I think, was 4 minutes, and they were just hitting it just on 4 minutes, so that that completely long continuous shot, which is really great. But then in the edit, there's sort of 3 secret cuts where they can cut between 3 of the different takes. And it's one of those things where I don't know if a lot of filmmakers are sort of, I mean, because everything's digital now and you're not running into those problems. So a lot of the filmmakers do just run footage forever. But back then it was one of those, it's kind of like almost a risky move to do. But it's one of those things where Carpenter, as a young filmmaker, he did a lot of those things, and a lot of them paid off, and some of them didn't. But yeah, a lot of them paid off in his movies. And there's one of those things where they're moving around lights individually, like so the light a room, and they'll do the long continuous shots, and then they'll have to, once the camera gets out of that room, they'll have to pack up all the lights and move them to another room for when the camera gets there, because they just didn't have enough lights in the budget to light the whole house properly. So they're basically just running around moving lights as the camera's going. And it's one of those things where it's it almost adds to the fun of the movie making, I guess. And I have, because I've been watching a couple of documentaries and things about it, and Carpenter has said that this is his favorite movie filmmaking experience to work on was making Halloween.
And the shots at the beginning were actually shot last because they found a decrepit house in California, so they had to do those shots first from the outside, for and then like within their budgets, after those shots were done, go in, like paint the house, put wallpaper up. And only, like you said, could afford lighting for like certain rooms, so they'd have to kind of like move stuff as they're like filming it, so it looked lived in.
Yeah, yeah, that's one of those. Yeah, and that's another one of those just movie magic tricks where it's like it's it's in reverse. So you're watching the house actually become better as the movie as the movie progresses in as they're making it, but in the actual movie you're watching it as start out as this great house turn into this creepy looking old rundown thing.
And even the
But
leaves on the ground, I was reading some trivia that's like
yeah,
to save money. They bought fake leaves because it's supposed to be set in Illinois when they were filming in California. So they bought all these like fake arts and craft type leaves, painted them to look how like would be in the autumn shades on the ground. So that way they
yeah,
could, after the filming was done for that day, they could pick them up, bag them, and like just throw them on the ground the next day for filming.
yeah.
And even
I mean,
Robert Englund was tasked for one day to throw leaves on the ground prior to becoming famous as Freddy Krueger about
yeah,
6 years later.
yeah. Well, that's one of those things. It was a lot of it was friends and just whoever you could get around. It's as a runner or a a grip or someone to do something on the film, and it was really guerrilla filmmaking at its finest back then. But
Yeah.
yeah, they talk about a little bit of that story, and yeah, you that's not the job you want on a film set is having to run around collecting all the leaves after they've thrown them along the
Yeah.
ground. But yeah, and there is a couple of shots because Jamie Lee Curtis in one of the commentaries points it out. She's like, you see when they're looking this way, you can see the people well, you can't see the people, but you see the leaves coming from behind the camera as the people are throwing them and they're sort of dispersing along the street, and then the camera looks to the other side of the street where some of the I think it's where Laurie is or one of the kids are, and you see all the lawns are perfectly green with no leaves on them, and all the trees are perfectly green with all their leaves. And he's just like, we just had to do our best. We couldn't hide everything.
Although to be fair to like filming, I'm in the Northeast, so I know all about fall weather. We have a tree in our front yard that holds on to its leaves for like the longest time. So even we're on into um Halloween now here, and it still has most of its leaves on. So I'm like, to be fair, it is believable for those of us who live in the Northeast and like who experience this can like attest that not every tree is bare even at this time of year, depending on how strong
Yeah,
the tree is and so forth.
yeah. And as long as I mean, they did a good enough job keeping all the palm trees out for how much they shot in and around like Pasadena and like Hollywood and stuff. They did a good enough job getting rid of all the palm trees. So you forgive them for some of those things, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like even then, like I'd have to say that I like as much as I've seen this film, I really didn't even notice. Like maybe like it's like just watching it recently, I kind of noticed some things, but
Yeah, it's just
growing up,
nitpicky when you yeah.
I wasn't really paying attention to the background. I was paying attention to what was happening in the
Yeah, and
foreground.
it's more just that Jamie Lee Curtis sort of like she just gives like it's a little dig. She's like, yeah, we tried, but we couldn't get everything right.
Yeah.
Hey Teresa, how are you? Thanks for being here. Miss Martin Muse is here. We've got Skirmitar. That will not be happening. Got
Hey,
Raging Rhino here. Thanks for being here. Had a great chat with Rhino on the last stream I did on this channel about the Replacements. That's a great movie if you haven't seen it, everyone. And Rhino was great fun to chat with on that. Hello, Skims. You see, you don't start with hi. You start with give Mozza the link. You've started with violence.
He woke up
Can't
and
go
chose
anywhere else
death.
but there.
He woke up and chose death this morning.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those movies. I mean, it has such a lasting legacy. It's I mean, spawned countless sequels, but the legacy of the first film, I mean, it launched a different franchise almost in Friday the 13th. There was a decade or if not more of knockoffs and copycats, all the way up to something like Scream, which was very much an homage to not just Halloween, but that whole genre that it spawned, basically.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I know Halloween wasn't the first slasher movie necessarily, but it was, if not the most successful, it was the most influential, I think.
Well, yeah, I would say technically the granddaddy is I would say Toby Hooper's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which came out 4 years before.
Yeah.
But as good as that movie is, it didn't have the impact as Carpenter's Halloween, because Halloween is what really gave birth to essentially gave birth to the slasher franchise. Because I don't think I think without the excessive success of Halloween, I don't think we would have gotten Friday the 13th.
No.
So, because, like I said, technically the granddaddy is Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but we have Halloween to thank for the slasher franchise.
If you want to kind of go like even further, like way back, it a movie that Carpenter has said that Halloween is very much influenced by Psycho, and you can see a lot of it in the shots and the style and the I mean, even like the characters' names. You can there's a lot of Psycho in Halloween as well, and I mean, whenever you talk about these movies, you've always really got to go back to that one as one of the building force, the building blocks of the entire slasher genre almost. But yeah, Texas Chainsaw and Halloween sort of neck and neck as the legacy movies of an entire genre, and then you have the ones that came after, like the Friday the 13th and the Nightmare on Elm Street, as the two of the, I guess you'd call, bigger of the second wave slasher movies franchises. But yeah, Halloween, it was a classic that still stands the test of time, and I don't think it will ever. I mean, we talked about it before. Just the fact that it's got Halloween in the title, it's not as big a deal as it was, say, 10 years ago and before that, but a perennial TV movie that would come on every year, the same time of year. You could watch it. I know growing up, there was a lot of movies like that. Like, I know Halloween isn't as big in Australia, but we still had a lot of those genre movies come on around that time, and especially Christmas as well. Like, you'd have a lot of those Christmas movies, but just having the connection to the date, I mean, that does a lot for the movie as well. It keeps it in the zeitgeist.
Yeah, it very much does. Like I said, it would have fallen by. I mean, the movie itself, I think, would have probably. I mean, if it was like this same plot, probably would have still stood the test of time. But at the same time, it's like it would not have had the same impact. Again, just like it's like like what's on TV tonight, or the babysitter murders. Where it's like, it's kind of akin to the later slasher movies of the 80s into the early 90s, when it really started to rely heavily on the tropes for the horror movie genre at that point, which was also what Wes Craven's kind of making fun of in Scream, where it's like run up the stairs instead of running out the front door, things like that. So it's like very like you really started to notice like it's rinse repeat from movie to movie to movie, versus like the first two I think like we'll talk about this later, but like the first two Halloween movies, like just fine, just like standalone right there. The same with like the first two Friday the 13th, so forth.
Yeah, and I think that's also it's kind of what a lot of the movies and the follow-ups took wrong from Halloween, I think. And I mean, if you haven't watched or haven't listened to the commentary for Halloween, I highly recommend it. I was listening to it today. It features John Carpenter, Deborah Hill, and Jamie Lee Curtis in sort of like edited segments throughout the movie. They cut them in and out as they're talking. And one of the things I think all the other ones get wrong is like, well, I don't think they get it wrong, but they make too much of a deal about it. Like kind of like with Scream a little bit. It's not the fact that Jamie Lee Curtis is like a virgin, or she's not the one having sex in the movie, or she's not the one with the boyfriend, and the other ones that are doing that get killed. Like it's not the fact that she's not doing that she's not killed. It's more the fact that she's not doing that she's actually observing and paying attention to what's going on, because she's not distracted with doing that.
That's what the book I was reading, like it covers like all movies in the decade. So it's not like there's an extensive section for Halloween, but that was also brought up where it's like, because if you think about it, one of her friends wasn't having sex. Like she was planning on having sex, but she wasn't having sex. So it's like but it's really like their focus. It's like kind of differentiating between them and Laurie. And that is their focus was on being with their boyfriends at night, like not actually like doing like like the Annie not doing her job, things like that. She's supposed to be babysitting, but her focus is elsewhere. Versus Laurie, it's like her mind is she's on babysitting. She's babysitting the boy like essentially like 3 houses down across the street. So. So she's able to pick up things and like where her mind is not anywhere else but where she is right now.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that all the knockoffs, or not, I won't call them knockoffs, but all the follow-ups sort of focused too heavily on, was that aspect of it, that it's almost like he's going after the ones that are doing, I want to say the ones that are misbehaving specifically. Like he's just killing almost anyone that's getting in his way.
Well, because you'd like to take into account the man he kills to get the jumper, pretty much like the workman's outfit. And I don't think that guy had sex on his mind. He might have had sex on his mind. I don't know, but you don't
know what he asked Michael when they first met each other.
We don't, but he was dead because Michael needed to change out of the hospital gown, because he would stand out like a sore thumb, pretty much, walking around Haddonfield, and it looked like he stepped out of a loony bin. So
there's a method to the madness in a way.
Yeah.
Gravy, how are you? Thanks for being here. Got a couple more people. Gigawatt, thank you. John Carpenter likes playing the Destiny game. Yeah, I know John Carpenter is a big gamer.
I didn't know that. I didn't know until recently. I was like, oh, kudos to him.
Yeah, because a lot of the interviews he's always done over the years, maybe like since the kind of like early 2000s, he's always had some sort of just randomly taken the interview to talk about a video game at the time. And I know that he I know Hideo Kojima, the maker of the Metal Gear Solid series, based a lot of his, I guess, world off John Carpenter and his movies, and sort of the Snake Plissken Escape from New York is basically Hideo Kojima basically just made Solid Snake. And
I can see that.
Yeah, it's one of those things. And Carpenter has I think they have sort of talked a bit before, because I think Carpenter Hideo Kojima approached Carpenter about his Silent Hill movie, that he wanted Carpenter to be involved with it. And I know later on he's worked with Guillermo del Toro, Hideo Kojima, that is. So yeah, but Carpenter, I know he used to play a lot of basketball, like NBA Live and NBA 2K. I don't know if he still does, but yeah, he used to play a lot of those games. The sort of I think what was it, Dead Space, or it was in space. I think it was Dead Space, and a lot of like Destiny, I guess, and stuff like that. But yeah, you can tell that he's enjoying his life now, that he's sort of just getting checks for other people making movies based off his work and playing video games.
I mean, I'm not gonna. Yeah, that is the life, pretty much. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, and especially for someone who's like sort of, he got screwed so much like throughout his career, and one of them was, I guess, Halloween, with the profits, I guess you'd say he's owed, but I mean, you're not really owed anything in Hollywood, but he did have a lot of pretty good contracts in there that to say that he was entitled to a lot of that back end money. But apparently, according to him, he didn't receive any if like basically I think he was entitled something like $7 to $10 million or something, and I don't know if he got a fraction of that or if any of it, but yeah, he had to fight for a lot of his money, and I think that's where a lot of the tension and the I guess you'd call it the Carpenter just not giving a fuck anymore about what his reputation or how he rubbed people in Hollywood anymore. And I think that's one of the best things about John Carpenter.
I don't blame him. Like, I'm not professing to be like an expert on Hollywood, but knowing what I know about the loopholes the studios always find to not pay the creatives is just so. Yeah,
in the trades and in the marketing and in the publications, the movie's a hit. It's making hand over fist millions and millions of dollars. But on the books, when the people come around asking for their cut, the movie hasn't made a cent yet. We're still looking for profit. We're still waiting for that to come in. But yeah, it is one of those things. Like I had a teacher in film school, and he was in a couple of movies that did really well. One of them was Pitch Black. He was like, you know, those things that play all over the world and continue to play on like TV and stuff, and have DVD sales and tied to franchises and stuff. You've got to chase those royalties. Like, they're not just gonna, a new DVD came out. That means we've got to pay this person, send them a check. Sometimes you've got to hunt for those things, and Hollywood's one of those places where checks go missing a lot of the times, it seems.
I believe it.
Yeah.
It's like the line from Big Trouble in Little China, like checks in the mail, pretty much.
Yeah, that's what old Jack Burton always says. Checks in the mail.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does actually. It might be a spoiler because I know Myra hasn't played. She's played parts of 5, but she hasn't played the ones before that yet. And in Metal Gear Solid 2, Snake does use the alias of Iroquois Pliskin for one of the parts of the game. So that's it's always those little nods that Hideo Kojima gives to Carpenter. Yeah, I think they approached him. He talked about he kind of had an interesting idea to make a Dead Space movie, but he's past the point in his career, I think, where he wants to do those sort of movies, like or movies in general. But I think there's a lot of those sort of games, especially those genre video games that they try and make into movies. But if they approach someone like a John Carpenter, he could do a lot of cool stuff with those things. Because I'm not sure if he is really fully retired now. He's 76. I'm not too sure. He's I think he's just enjoying what his career gave him now, and I don't think he's really worried about adding too much more. I know he does a lot of touring with his son. They do a lot of the soundtracks from the movies, a lot of the movie scores and themes he did. They perform them live, and he's with his son, and I think his godson. So that's one of the cool things if you ever get a chance to see John Carpenter in concert. I know, because I don't think he's ever come to Australia. I know they do a lot of the stuff in America and maybe Europe, but that'd be a really cool concert to see, I think.
Yeah.
We've got Biggles here as well. I can't read the title, which it's talking about. We're talking about the movie Halloween.
Well, his reading level. His Biggles has stated his reading level is just above Maz's.
Yeah. Does he mean he can't read the title? Like, he isn't able to read the title, or he's on a device right now where the title is not visible to him? Because with Biggles, it could be either. You don't know.
Yeah. True.
But yes. Anyway, yeah, and back to the movie itself. I mean, what is your like a brief synopsis of the movie is a young boy, Michael Myers, kills his sister while she was meant to be babysitting him. The parents come home, find him. flash forward to, I think it's about 15 years later. He's come home. He's terrorizing the street where he was from, and he's basically kind of just continuing what he started those 15 years ago, just with a new group of a new set of targets. And it's kind of it's not a complex story. It's not a real, like, like a mystery story. Like a lot of the sort of the twist elements and stuff come into it later, with like them being related and all that sort of stuff. But it is one of those, just a simple story executed extremely well. And it's
he really, like, if you think about it, he essentially picked Lori initially because she's essentially the first one he saw, because she's the one who she dropped off the key. So if she hadn't dropped off the key, would she have been the targets? It's like just one of those I don't want to say it's like just one of those coincidences.
Yeah, sliding doors moment almost.
Yeah.
Like
whereas if she hadn't been the one to drop off the key, if her dad had been, would her dad have been the targets? So it's like he just focused on her, and then from her, the focus shifted to her two friends because he saw her with them.
And there's kind of a little bit of an argument to be made, because I know I heard it in the commentary. I think one of the people mentioned that Laurie reminded Michael of his sister, and that's why he went for her. But if you're going by that, I think what you're saying is sort of more in what he was doing. He locked onto almost the first target he saw once he got home, and he almost sort of changed direction a little bit, because I think the PJ Souls character in reality would have reminded Michael of his sister more.
Yeah.
Especially what she was doing, and and because she was almost like very much a carbon, not a carbon copy, but a very much identical person to a stand-in, if you will, to Michael's sister. But yes, as you go, he just locks onto this group of people and begins to systematically take them out. And it's one of those ones where, and modern technology ruins all horror movies now, but it's one of those ones. There's no cell phones, there's no instant messaging and all that sort of stuff. It's just the house across the street, the kids seeing things he doesn't know, what's going on. She doesn't know whether to believe the kid or not. It's just the suspense of not knowing what's going on in that house across the street, as Michael's going from house to house, sort of killing all of Laurie's friends. And it kind of like culminates in that scene where Laurie's walking like from her house, and it's that long walk across the street towards the house across the street. And it's one of those ones where you kind of like, you can tell that, like, as the audience, you're like going, in, no, don't go in that house, don't go in that house, turn around, turn around, turn around, turn around. And it's it's that slow build that, if maybe if they had more money and more time, they wouldn't have shot it that way. There would have been more coverage and stuff, but just the way they do it, just going from Laurie and then back to the house, and then Laurie back to the house as they cut, as she moves across. It's one of those perfect scenes that it sort of it perfectly encapsulates what the movie is. It's just that build up of suspense as you sort of, what is awaiting the character that's about to get killed, or about to almost get killed.
And the fact that there are no cell phones, I think, just adds to the tension, because she can't stay in that house to make a call. She can't. It's like she has to get out of the house, and so she goes to a neighbor's house that's right next to her, or like where the little girl's house is, pretty much. And she's banging on the door. She needs a phone, so it's like all of those. And the owner like turns on the light, looks out, like, and assumes she's playing a trick or something. Just turns the light back off.
I think it's one of those things. I mean, just a little side note. It's one of those things where I think all modern horror movies should set themselves in the past, like the 70s or the 80s before cell phones and stuff like that. It just makes everything so much more believable, and it just adds so much more to the tension, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, I mean, every horror movie and stuff now, you've got that obligatory scene where, I can't get service, or the phone breaks or something, and it's just like, well, just set it before then, and you don't have to worry about this stuff.
Yeah, because it is like it does become obligatory, like dead zones, and I'm like,
Yeah.
like granted the coverage is not that good, but I mean, how many like places can you run into dead zones
Yeah.
in the United States?
Yeah. And yeah, and it continues that slow build, the movie, and you get to the point where it's just Laurie left against Michael, and she's like, she doesn't. That's the other thing in the movie. She doesn't abandon those kids. Like, she doesn't just, as soon as she sees Michael, just takes off down the road or anything. She goes back for the kids to make sure that they're safe and to get them out of harm's way, and puts herself back in danger to do so. And that's one of the things that strong female leads and heroines and stuff. It's been happening for a long time, and Laurie Strode was one of those sort of the first. I mean, I think was she, because I'm not 100% sure if I had when I last saw the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but Laurie's, if not, she's the first final girl. She's one of the first final girls.
Like there was a final, there was a final girl, but it's like the difference between the final girl and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because I do remember that, like, I mean, spoiler alert for those who have not seen the original 1974 movie. I think it ends with she's somehow flagged down a truck, and she's on the bed of the truck. She's back in the bed of the truck, and like the last shot you see is Leatherface running after, trying to run after her, and gets mad and starts wailing with the chainsaw because she's gotten away from him pretty much. But the difference between those two is because her survival was she was only focused on herself at that point because she was the last one, whereas Laurie is not only focused on her survival, but like you said, there are two little kids there that could potentially be victims. She has no idea the extent of the psychopathic mentality in Michael Myers. Is he does he have a method to his madness, or he's just going to indiscriminately kill everything in his path, including children? So she kind of puts herself, as you put it, in harm's way to make sure he doesn't get to the innocent victims of children. So that's the difference between those two. So both are final girls, but there is that marked difference where it's you do have that element of self-sacrifice in Laurie, to the point where she almost would have sacrificed herself if it meant the children getting away at that point.
Yeah. And she also kept going as well. Like she, Halloween 2, going on later on, H2O and so forth to now, with the 2018 Halloween and Kills and Ends and stuff. She was the most enduring final girl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and yeah, so a strong female lead that stood up to the embodiment of evil, pretty much, and that's that. Then it leads us up to, because I haven't talked about him at all really, but then that's where Laurie sort of intersects with Loomis a bit. Laurie's fought off Michael out of the closet, and she's made her sort of her last sort of dash to get the kids out of the house, and she's sort of standing there, sitting there, and she knows that Michael's. She's just realized that Michael's back, and then Loomis sort of comes to save the day. He's my favorite character in the movie, Loomis. And I don't know if it's just because of the way Donald Pleasance plays him, but so I know originally they wanted first choice was Peter Cushing, and then they offered it to Christopher Lee, and he turned it down. But
both turned it down because of low pay, and I think Christopher Lee's later on said he regretted that decision. He regretted that decision, but now it's gone to a point where it's as much as I love Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, I can't picture anyone but Donald Pleasance as Loomis.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, going by those two, Lee especially, I think it would have been a very different character.
Yeah.
Not just in the portrayal, but also the portrayal, but not just in that, but it was a lot of it was the mannerisms of Donald Pleasance and the intricacies in the little things he was doing, like a lot of the little sort of the looks around and the I mean, his delivery of lines is just brilliant. I mean, with pretty much every movie he's been in.
Yeah, could you picture either Peter Cushing or Christopher Lee? Because I just watched the movie where I think it's the three boys, the two of the boys dare the other one to go up to the front door of the Myers house. Like, could you picture Peter Cushing or Christopher Lee going like, "Hey, Lonnie, get your ass away from the door"? I can't picture them doing that.
Yeah. He has such a weird playfulness to the character that it doesn't seem like it should fit in the movie, but it fits perfectly. Yeah. And it's one of those things in another behind the scenes documentary I was watching. It was Donald Pleasance didn't really understand the script or the character when he first got it, and he sort of said, okay, well, I'll do it, but I don't really get it. And I think the more he, because I think he was only there for 5 days, if I'm not mistaken, shooting. He was there for under a week because that's all they could afford him for was for a week of shooting. So they built the entire schedule around that and had everything go from there. And it's one of those ones where he is definitely the linchpin of the movie, not just sort of on screen, but the binding force that sort of made that movie come together behind the scenes with his performance and getting a name and caliber of actor like that to come on board.
Yeah, I think
that's almost half your job done.
Yeah, because I was reading some of the trivia, and I think John Carpenter said that, like, behind the scenes, he was very nervous because he had someone of Donald Pleasance's caliber working on the movie.
Who had a lot of respect for and was a big fan of.
Yeah, and who Donald Pleasance also asked Carpenter a lot of questions, which would make I think anyone nervous because like you're trying to essentially explain not only explain your film but defend it to whomever's like even starring in your movie. And Carpenter later said that he realized Donald Pleasance was just testing his passion. He wanted to to make sure that this wasn't just a kind of like a throwaway movie that he was part of. Like there was actually drive behind the film, and I think after the film, he and Carpenter became like best friends or like really good friends.
And it's because it's I mean, as the director, like when the actor comes or if anyone comes to you on set with a question, like it's not you can't pussyfoot around with an answer. You have to have the definitive answer straight away because you should know what you should have every little detail of your movie planned out. And if it's if someone comes to you asking, are we going with the red or the green? You should, red, because you know what you want. And I think where you're saying like Pleasance was playing games with Carpenter, I think a lot of that was the questions like sort of, do you know what we're doing? Like, as the actor, I need to know what I'm doing, but do you know what you're doing right now? Because I think, there a lot of the actors do play weird games like that because some of it's ego, but some of it is like Carpenter says in some of the stories about Pleasance, he goes, he's a funny guy. Like he like when they were working together, like he had a sort of a quirky sense of humor, and it plays through in a lot of the characters he plays, especially Loomis, I think.
And another piece of trivia that I read that I found interesting, that apparently the scene, I think it's the scene where the nurse is driving him up to the asylum or the sanitarium or whatever you want to call it, and he's going into his experience with Michael. I guess prior to the shooting, Carpenter said that Pleasance had like consumed like 2 bottles of wine. So Carpenter was like worried that he wasn't going to be able to deliver his lines, but Donald Pleasance actually like just was able to deliver the whole spiel in that
Yeah.
car. So it's like knowing he was like actually drunk while he was saying those lines.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I guess bravo. I couldn't tell, but
No.
he was pretty drunk.
Oh. No, yeah, it's one of those things where yeah, one of the things I think he says in the commentary is like when they're doing the scene at the asylum just after they get out of the car and Michael's taken it and driven off, and it's pouring with rain, and he goes, Donald hated this scene because he hated being out in the rain and it was freezing cold. He's like, I think I'm sure Donald would have much preferred to have been in a restaurant with a bottle of wine instead.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah. I'll cover this. Gigawatt. Has William Shatner ever talked about how he feels about a mask of him being used as a horror icon? I thought he tweeted about it once. I am not too sure. They have one of the documentaries I watched. They have like a little joke where they're talking about the mask, and then they cut to, I think it's William Shatner doing one of his one of those like Ripley Believe It or Not shows. I'm not too sure which of one of those shows he did in America. It's like where they talk about the strange and weird things.
I had to look it up. I literally was just watching. My dad literally just had like episodes on. It's not Ripley's Believe It or Not. That was another.
I think Dean Cain was on that one.
Yeah, Dean Cain was on that one, and then I'm not. I guess the proper term is Trekker now, but I'm not a Trekkie. I'm like Trekkie will always be the term for me.
Yeah.
So I can't remember the actor who played Riker.
Beyond Belief.
It might be Beyond Belief because I think the actor who played Riker was on another show like that, like Beyond Belief. It was more like an unexplained mysteries type show.
Yes. But yeah, they do a little joke where they cut to Shatner on one of those shows, and he just says a random line like, I think he said something like, "That's weird," and it's just like I don't think he's ever really commented on it, but it is a cool concept that they found just a random mask in a store. It goes to it lends itself to the low budget nature of the movie, but just finding a random mask in the store, and then I think they said they took the eyebrows off it, the sideburns off it, and sort of maybe colored the hair a little bit and sort of roughed it up. So it's sort of they cut like pieces out, so it sort of had that sort of frayed look, and then just spray painted it white, and it's probably the most effective mask in horror history.
It ended up being the mask they used because the prop guy, the one who bought the masks, and this mask sold for like $2 back in like the late 70s. Bought like a clown mask of sorts, and they did a test with both masks, and they determined that the clown was a little too creepy for the vibe they were going with in the film. So they scrapped that and tested it with the William Shatner mask and how they done it up, and it worked better with the film because of how emotionless the mask looked.
Yeah, because if you see that mask in like behind the scenes stills or like any sort of stuff they had for when they were making the movie, the original William Shatner mask looks absolutely nothing like William Shatner at all. It doesn't really look like anybody. It just looks like sort of a Ken doll face almost.
Yeah. I was looking when I originally read the trivia for that. I was looking at the mask, trying to see William Shatner in it, and I was like, I'd have to see how the mask looked beforehand because I'm not seeing William Shatner in this face.
No, it does not look like him at all, really. All of Orlando, Florida feels like a dead zone. Well, Biggles, you just need a bigger cell phone. That's all.
Yeah.
You just climb the tower like in Kindergarten Cop. You need to be that kid that climbs the cell tower and you get a better signal.
There you go.
That's how you do it, Biggles. That's your job for the weekend. Climb a cell tower and try and get a better signal. Take Moza with you.
If only one comes back, like we'll look the other way. Yeah, I knew Command and Record show was beyond belief, but I know
Yeah.
William Shatner has a show. I had to look it up real fast.
No, yeah, it is. I remember it's The Unexplained. I'm pretty sure is the Shatner
I think it
show.
is. Yeah, because he did one just recently on Jack the Ripper.
Yeah. I think I did watch that because I used to have Netflix years ago, and I watched that series when it first came out. I watched the Ghostbusters one, I think, and maybe a Back to the Future one, maybe. I'm not too sure, but I remember they had a Halloween series, and the movie specifically Halloween was one of them, and that was they're a decent series, the movies that made us, but I think they gloss over a lot, and I think a bit of it's sort of stuff that is already out there in other documentaries and stuff, but it's a decent sort of collection that they do.
Mm-hmm.
I told you to go to sleep, Mozza. What are you doing?
Not listening. That's what he's doing.
No. And yeah, so back to Loomis. He's my favorite character in the movie, and it's not just because of the performance by Pleasance, but that sort of it is the character itself. It's that dogged determination that he's after Michael the entire movie. Like he knows, like he's the only one that he's almost like Kyle Reese in Terminator. Like he knows how dangerous Michael is, but nobody else believes him. And like he's like, it's okay. Well, it's up to me. Up to me. I've got to stop Michael now. And it is a really great character. I'm not the biggest. I'm not that familiar with the Halloween movies after the first one. I know he continues on after that, but I'm not.
I think he just had a. Was he just in the second one, or did he come back? No, he came back for
Well, I know he
came back for like the fourth one, I think.
Yeah,
or
he's
fourth
supposed
or
to
fifth
die
one.
at the end of the second one.
Yeah.
They play it off that he did, but I know they do bring him back in the movies later on.
Yeah, because they bring him back because the original plan was to have the Halloween series just be more like a series of vignettes with movies taking place on Halloween. But because they did the direct sequel with Michael Myers, still with Michael Myers, people associated Michael Myers with Halloween. So when the third one came out, Season of the Witch, the movie itself was really not that good, but it's not bad. But people were pissed off because they're like, I watched this entire film and like no Michael Myers at all, and like and it's supposed to be Halloween 3. So
yeah, kind of. I don't know if it would have worked any better splitting them up, like having 3 as the second movie and then maybe continuing the Michael Myers story on after that if they wanted to make it like an anthology sort of series. But going 2 movies like that and Michael Myers being such an iconic character and then completely changing it up, that's I mean, a lot of people are going to get mad, but I mean, it's one of those things where I can see where the filmmakers were coming from, but to take away an iconic character like that, you've got to give them something pretty special, and I don't think 3 was that.
No,
special.
3 was. I mean, it was okay, but it's compared to what came before, it was like a major step down.
Yeah,
where
I mean,
it's
even
like
2 is like, you know, 1's there, and I think 2 sort of steps down a bit, but yeah, I think 3 and those sort of ones, they kind of they're not. I mean, you could almost just call 3, just take the Halloween out of the title. Like, is it Season of the Witch? Or
they
something?
just call it Season of the Witch.
Yeah, and I think people would have been fine with that. It probably maybe it would have even been more successful as kind of like its own thing. But yeah, you're fighting an uphill battle with a Halloween movie without Michael Myers in it, I think.
Well, yeah, I'm saying people. That's what people were expecting, and
Yeah,
if the studio had come right out and maybe started with the anthology aspect immediately following Halloween, and actually related that to the public that this is the plan moving forward,
yeah,
then maybe it would have been better received. Like the whole concept would have been at least accepted for the most part.
yeah,
But because of the success of the first one, and they wanted to go like directly that same night with Michael Myers, but like a different location, things like that, because they wanted to capitalize on the success of the first one. They really shot themselves in the foot when they moved forward, because at that point they didn't relate it to the public as they should have, and it just came out of nowhere. Because I remember watching the franchise and like going from like the second one to the third one, and even I was thinking like, what the fuck? Like, where's Michael Myers in this?
yeah. It's I haven't watched it in probably maybe almost a year, I'd say, but I remember it's very much that weird departure. It's kind of like my first reaction when I watched like way back as a kid when I watched Predator 2, because I was such a big Schwarzenegger fan, and then I was like, oh, Predator 2, and then it was Danny Glover, and I was like, oh, I like Danny Glover, but Arnold would have been so much cooler coming back in this Predator sequel. But but I eventually got over that, and I can. But it's a little bit similar, but I can see people were maybe not as willing to come back to Halloween 3 as I was to Predator 2. But yeah, Michael Myers sounds like a filthy top digger. He's I don't know if Michael Myers plays Yu-Gi-Oh. I'd have to get back to you on that, Biggles.
Yeah.
We'll see. Pyramid Head bashed Michael Myers.
I'll tell you what, Mazza, why don't you go 1v1 Pyramid Head and tell me how that goes?
Pyramid Head, he's bashed you, Mozza. See, it's already happened. You can't even 1v1 him now. It's already happened.
Yeah, they went into
supernatural territory in the sequels.
Yeah, they did. And that's like where I was like, okay, you lost me.
Yeah, that's one of my big problems I have with a lot of the pretty much everything that came after maybe 2. It's the over the top supernatural element added to Michael Myers. Like embodiment of evil, cool, basically unstoppable, cool. But when you start throwing like witchcraft and ancient druids and curses and that sort of stuff into it, that's when it just sort of goes way beyond what it started as and doesn't really add anything to it. But I mean, I don't think I've seen the second one.
I did, but I couldn't tell you what happened because it was so fucking dark. But it's like, no, I can remember it wasn't good. It wasn't good.
Yeah, so it's basically like Alien vs Predator 2.
Yeah,
where
kind of. Yeah, it kind of was. So I was like, I'd like to tell you what this is about, but I can't tell you because I can't see. But in my opinion, they're really not worth it because, see, like what I love, like again, like the supernatural stuff, just like took me out of the movies. It's like probably my biggest issues I have with the later movies in the Halloween franchise. But what sets the original Halloween apart from Rob Zombie's Halloween is that with Dr. Loomis's description of Michael, when he's talking about, I spent this many years trying to reach the boy, and then this many years like telling people he has to be fucking locked up and like don't let him anywhere near society. And his description of like I looked into his eyes and like there was nothing. Like there, like it's like basically pure evil, things like that. And like that whole description, it's like just that alone makes Michael scary because now it's you don't need a supernatural element. He is inhuman. He has no emotions whatsoever. He's literally a machine, and his sole focus is on if he locks in on a target, you are dead because he is now you're his prey at that point. So it makes him just as scary. You don't need a supernatural element. Whereas with the Rob Zombie movies, he had to show, poor Michael, he had a shit kid. He had a shit childhood. His mom was a tramp. His stepdad or her boyfriend was a asshole and things like that. And you didn't need it. You didn't really need that. It
complicates the plot of what was a simple story in the first one.
Yeah, and it's like you didn't need it, and then just again, just you're trying to add a super like a sympathetic quality to Michael. And I'm like, no, it's not supposed to. There's no sympathy whatsoever at all to be associated with Michael Myers, pretty much.
Yeah, and going back to the original, I mean, there's a couple of the, like in the documentary and in the commentary, John Carpenter mentions it, that when he was in college, one of the classes, I think it was a psych class he was taking, they did a field trip to a psychiatric ward, and he saw a kid there that was that he based that speech off, and the dead look of Michael Myers off is just, there was a kid there just sort of just staring into space, and he had the look of just dead evil in his eyes, and it was one of the things that kind of shook John Carpenter when he was there, and he was like, that's genuinely terrifying, and that's sort of real life. And that's one of the other debates that comes out around these sort of movies is the, you know, people emulating the violence in the movies, but kind of in reality that was John Carpenter taking something that's truly terrifying in reality, in real life, like someone that has sort of just no emotions or no remorse or anything, and just turning them into a kind of a relentless killer after these teenage kids. And because they go into it in the commentary, the debate about on-screen violence versus real life violence, and what sort of triggers what triggers what. But I think it's fairly safe to say that it's the real life stuff is a lot worse than the what you see in movies.
Yeah, because I think they kind of like divert to the original Nightmare on Elm Street just a bit, because like, you know, like without Halloween we wouldn't have had Friday the 13th, and I don't think we would have had Nightmare on Elm Street, even though Nightmare on Elm Street was Wes Craven and his own experience when he was younger, which inspired the Freddy Krueger character. And that is like just, I'm trying to think, like, you know, what there was a case going on in real life, because originally Freddy Krueger was supposed to be a pedo. He originally was supposed to be a pedo. So, like, you know, if there's one positive, only one positive I can give the remake for Nightmare on Elm Street in like 2010 was the fact that that was the original premise for Freddy Krueger. The collective amnesia for the children is, I don't buy that for a second, but Wes Craven had to change it because the real life case was so horrific that he was worried he would be accused of his art imitating that life, pretty much. But it was just a coincidence at that time. Like, he never at all was taking anything as inspiration from that case. So he changed Freddy Krueger to a child murderer.
I mean, it'd be good if you didn't have to worry about that sort of stuff. But I mean, you hear those stories all the time about filmmakers making a movie and then either having to can it completely or change it or hold the release date, and because of a real life event that may similarly mirror that that's happening in the movie, or maybe an event that happened at a screening of the movie, stuff like that. Like, you always sort of you can't control those sort of things, but when you're doing a scene in your own movie and then something similar might happen in real life, like I think like Scream 3 and Columbine, I think were pretty close together, and they changed a lot of what happened in Scream 3, because I'm not sure if it was Columbine or another one that happened around the same time was too close to what happened. And because I think like even something like in Spider-Man, the original one, where they took out the edited out the Twin Towers from the movie. You know, you're always sort of worried about stuff like that as a filmmaker. I mean, that one was very different because that's completely out of the filmmaker's control. But there's always stories like that, and it's I have heard that one before about the Nightmare on Elm Street, and it's almost like you wish going back that Craven could have maybe followed through, but I don't know if it would have made the movie work better or worse or whatever. But not being scared away from your ideas almost.
Yeah. So
It's Chuck Norris. Donald Pleasance nails his role. Well, he sure does. We're talking about before. He's Loomis is my favorite character in the movie, and Donald Pleasance is one of those actors that every role he does, he adds another level to the character. And
he was completely upfront with Carpenter as to the reason why he took the role initially. It's because he has alimony to pay, and his daughter was in a rock and roll group who liked John Carpenter's music. So it's like,
yeah,
he said, like, your music is cool. So it's like,
yeah,
I'm taking the job.
it's one of those things, yeah. And that's a good segue to lead us into the fact that the music for this film, pretty much John Carpenter's signature is doing the compositions and the soundtracks for his movies. And this, I mean, without a doubt, I think this would be his most iconic theme. It's one of the most iconic themes in cinema history. So yeah, it's well and truly his most iconic theme. But it's one of those ones where you're I think you mentioned before it's the 4/5/4 time, isn't it? The theme, it goes in the 5/4 time.
Yeah.
And it's the he mentioned a story about it. He had he got given a bongo drums by his dad or something when he was a kid, and he never really learned how to use them, but his dad taught him how to play the 5/4 drum beat. And it was basically he just took that and turned it into piano and made the Halloween theme. And it's the calling card of all of John Carpenter's themes. It's just completely simplistic, but all of them work perfectly for what he's trying to do in the movie.
But everything works, even the opening, like not just with the music, but
the pumpkin.
The pumpkin. It's just the pumpkin, and it's like one of those where it's like, if you were to describe it to someone, and like as like it is, it doesn't sound like it would be creepy or anything like that. But when you put that jack-o'-lantern right and have the score going, and the camera just focusing closer and closer and closer onto the jack-o'-lantern, I think like it in the simplicity sets up the tone for the movie.
Yeah, and not just that, but if you explain that to someone, like if you're a director and you were asking someone, I need a title sequence for my film, when it's a slow dissolve on a pumpkin with the title of the movie, and we're just gonna push in and real slow, they'd come back with like, oh yeah, we can do that digitally, or we can do that in 3D, no problem, $100,000 or something like that. That was out of necessity. Like they had almost no money in the budget because Carpenter wanted to do a long steady Panaglide shot up the street where of Haddonfield, and it was no money in the budget to do something like that. So Dean Cundy, the director of photography, just got the jack-o'-lantern, just put a dark background behind it, lit it so it was basically that was all you saw, and just did the slow push in. And they added the Halloween they added in later optically or in post, and it was just one of those things where it just works perfectly for the film, how simple it is, and it's one of those almost guerrilla or indie filmmaking techniques that is it's born out of necessity and creativity more than just throwing money at a problem, like kind of filmmaking devolved into.
I think also there was a bit of trivia I read where I can't remember which studio exec he was showing the movie to, but Carpenter showed the movie to one of them, and she didn't think it was scary. But when he showed her the movie, it was minus the score.
Yeah.
So it's like her perspective was like, this movie's not that like not that scary. But then when she watched it along with the score, like then, like you said again, that she started feeling like the tension and the apprehension. And I think even people who were watching it in the I can't remember if it was a test audience or just the audience in general, but there were people who actually would cover their ears as soon as they heard the music because they knew as soon as they heard it, like like they were going to see Michael or something was going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and she even said to John, like, I was completely wrong. I saw the movie with the music, and it's terrifying.
Yeah.
And it is one of those things. Yeah, the music very much acts like a warning sign for Michael and his movements around the town, and it's or up the street, and it's one of those. They're all very similar. The themes in the in tone and everything. Nothing's like too big or too out there or different to anything else, but they all really complement each other and give the film just something completely. It's almost like ethereal. Like he does it in the fog as well. Like the music sort of adds more of the ethereal feeling to the movie. And I think a lot of Carpenter's, I guess you'd call them his signatures. I think he found them on Halloween when he was making it, and he was like, "Yeah, these work. This works for me, and I'm gonna keep doing this."
Like even the scene where at the end it's silence. Like Laurie has sent the children off to go go to a neighbor's house to phone for the police, things like that. Again, the time when you didn't have a cell phone, you couldn't just call from the house or just step outside. Basically, they would have to run literally across the street or down the street to get to someone with a phone, pretty much. And she's sitting there leaning against the door frame. She's exhausted. She's like you can tell, like, not that she's done, but she's like, she's like she's like just like finally kind of like taking a breath.
Yeah.
Given everything that happened, and the music, all you see Michael in the back just sit up, and then it goes dun 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 dun. It reminded me in a way of like Jaws, where it's like it could be like silence, and then like all of a sudden like the theme just goes like dun 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 dun, like it tells the audience like you're going to be in for something that's going to be happening. You might not see it, but something's going to happen. So
the music knows before you do.
Yeah.
And that bit there, I think Carpenter kind of borrows that a little bit with the start of The Thing when he does that, because that's got that same little dun 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 dun. And then at the end as well, where you don't know who's who or if anyone's the thing or not, and they're going to get out of the ice station, and it starts with that dun dun. And it is one of those Carpenter. It's just simple, but it's effective. It's almost like that Law and Order, the Law and Order. What is it? Dun, dun.
Like you talking about like the sound in between, like like we're going like cha-chung, things like that. Yeah, I know what sound you're talking about, because I actually pulled that sound and made it my mom's text tone, because she's a lawyer, so I made it her text tone. So we'll hear that thing going dun, dun, go off at the table.
But and I mean, the Tommy Lee Wallace, like the production designer, everyone brought their A game to this movie. Like Carpenter, Deborah Hill, Jamie Lee Curtis, PJ Souls, Nancy Loomis, Donald Pleasance, and that's my other favorite character in the movie as well. I think he's Charles Cyphers, plays Sheriff Brackett.
Oh yeah,
he's because he's in a lot of Carpenter movies, and he's one of those guys that is one of those real sort of American everyman kind of dude. He could play the sheriff. He could play like probably just a regular dude in the town. Like he's a real knockabout kind of dude. And he's one of those. He has my favorite line in the movie where he scares Laurie, and he's like, "Everyone's entitled. I guess everyone's entitled one good scare on Halloween." And it's just, it's one of those. It's almost like you'd call it a cheap scare, like because
Mhm.
it's nothing happens from it, and it's just one of those sort of jump scare moments, and they followed up with a little joke, and it's kind of it pushes the movie on a little bit, and I know he continues on in the second film, and then in these reboots they've done with kills and ends and stuff, but in the first movie he's great. I'm not really familiar with him in the other ones, but in that first one he is great.
So I think like it does kind of like it is kind of like a they do joke about it. It's kind of like a goes nowhere jump scare, but at the same time, I will say that at least it didn't. It kind of came out of nowhere, and at the same time, it didn't, because at that point, Lori is like she's been seeing this figure watching her. She's been telling her
she's
friends
getting
like
stalked.
she's getting stalked. She's like, we know that she's actually seeing these things, but to her friends, it's like they're like, oh, you're seeing things, sort of situation, like, oh, you're a little crazy now. So it's like she already has all those emotions like inside of her. So as soon as she like bumped into her friend's dad, like you can like, I could see where that jump scare, or like it's like where her reaction would be like that, like little jump scare moments.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
if you've seen that creepy dude walking around behind you and popping in and out of hedges, and then all of a sudden there's someone bumps into you from behind, you're gonna freak out.
And then to kind of diffuse it with a joke, like, okay,
yeah,
and then she like just walks off, sort of situation. So like at least like that again shows the studios here, you could have a jump scare. Like we don't have problems necessarily with jump scares, but they have to make sense, and you have to have the proper build up. And at that point, we had the proper build up, and in a way, it makes sense because that's her friend's dad. He's probably coming home, like stopping by from during his shift, things like that. It makes sense for him to be there. Essentially, it's not like she randomly ran into him on the street way down the road, sort of situation.
Yeah. And they don't fall into the territory of what you see sort of recently is like the fake out jump scares, where it's like I mean there is one in this. I don't know if it's intentional or not. I think it kind of is, but where the guy's getting something out of the fridge and he opens the fridge and then he closes the fridge, and you kind of expect Michael to maybe be standing behind the fridge door at that time. But then he keeps going through the house to the back door, and then that's when Michael jumps out and grabs him and puts him up against the wall. But like recently in horror films and stuff, you see a lot of those fake out jump scares where it's people open doors and it's just like a lot of build up in the scene to nobody coming out and doing anything. And it's just like, well, that's just a scene of almost pointlessness. But it doesn't fall into that territory at all. And one of the things we'll jump a bit now because we're talking about Sheriff Brackets, but he's in the new ones. Have you seen Halloween 2018 Kills and Ends?
I have not seen Ends yet. I'm given the reactions from most people and people I trust. I think I'm gonna wait until it's like available to stream.
Yeah.
Or something like that, because but like the first one, I did see the first two of the new trilogy, like Halloween and Halloween Kills. I enjoyed Halloween, the essentially the I guess the reboot of the sequels for the most part, because I saw the potential there. I saw where it could go and things like that. I don't think it lived up to the original, but at least it didn't like fall into the supernatural territory. Like he was like back to he's just pure evil. He's like literally just emotionally dead inside, and his focus is still Laurie Strode because she's the one that got away from him that Halloween night, pretty much. So he still has that laser focus on her. So I could see the potential there. I could see like where if they knew what they were doing, that they could take it and actually could be a good trilogy. And then I saw Halloween Kills, and I was like, I'm not exactly liking this. But what could kill it for me is Halloween Ends. And it looks like Halloween Ends, if I watch, is gonna kill it for me based on people's reactions.
Yeah,
Because
it
I didn't like the whole. I mean, I get the whole premise of vigilantism and like not wanting to live in fear, things like that. I get it, but at the same time, it's like there was that kind of a subtle message on like where the people were. I don't want to say that they were just as bad as Michael, but the whole like the scene where they target that poor guy that like he was a mental patient, but like someone said, there's Michael, and they all start chasing this guy without like even stopping to think like, hey, like is this really Michael? Is this really, and kind of painting them as no better than Michael because they like do end up killing this guy.
yeah,
I was like,
Evil Dies Tonight.
yeah. I was like, it's like, okay, that's where you're like losing me here. Like,
Yeah,
it's like
it had its moments, kills, but yeah, I think the 2018 one was I think the best of the three, the new ones they made. I watched Ends. It's I won't spoil anything, but it's definitely a watch on streaming kind of movie and a hold your expectations kind of movie. Like anything you thought was going to happen in Kills, don't expect a lot of those expectations to be carried out.
Okay. So, but like I said, I think like what works with the first one is that it still had that simplicity to it, where Michael's escaped. He's come back to Haddonfield because he's like he's still hunting down Laurie Strode. You have Laurie again trying to convince people because it's been so many years, and everyone's like, it's not necessarily thinking thinking she is crazy because she literally has herself like as a recluse out in the middle of nowhere with a self-made gun range.
Well, that's the most realistic part of the whole movie, I think.
I know that's like I'm saying that, but people like think like, oh, like she's like just crazy because like because of like the essentially the lifestyle she chose. Even though it's realistic, people have that assumption about her. So when she's like so when like things like when Michael returns and everything, people don't want to believe that he has because it's been 40 years. So Michael would be like 61. So you have a 60-year-old basically.
He's spry for a 60-year-old. Don't worry about that.
He's pretty spry for a 60-year-old, but that's people's mentalities. But at the same time, again, still simple because things start happening. Like without all the craziness, and like kind of mirrors and tone the first one. So I like, okay, I see potential here. So let's see where this goes. And then it just went downhill beginning in the second one. So
yeah, well that's the whole thing. Like I'm not a fan when it can work, but I don't like it in general where a movie specifically erases things that come before it, like how Halloween disregarded everything after the original Halloween movie. Like it just went from Halloween to Halloween 2018. Like they didn't, they ignored everything in Halloween 2. And I'm like, because a lot of the problems they made in that was you're kind of wondering, well, how did Michael get caught originally? Like, why did he end up in this asylum? Because the last time we saw him at the end of Halloween, he was gone after he fell off the balcony. He was just gone. And then they have to go back in Kills and retroactively come back and show the Hawkins and the police and stuff showing up and following him through the streets and the houses and stuff, and basically acting like morons. Where the cop shoots the other cop, where he's trying to shoot Michael, and it just sort of adds. It just sort of they didn't improve upon what happened in 2 or at the end of 1, in my opinion. It's like you spent all this time and energy to erase those movies, but what you did replace them with was, I mean, at best maybe a little bit better than what happened before, but arguably it was just as bad, if not worse.
So,
but yeah, I'm not a fan of that in general where they do that. But
so I get that. I think like it probably wouldn't have. I think if they had the Hawkins scene at the beginning of the first Halloween, like Halloween 2018, so at least it gave us, okay, like this is how he was caught, sort of situation, and like we can believe that he would end up in an asylum for 40 years. But like you said, they kind of retroactively like, oh shit, we didn't explain that, so we gotta like show that in this one here, pretty much.
That's kind of what it felt like to me.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, overall, I don't think they added.
That's what they should have done. Like the scene itself didn't have to be long. Just show the cops surrounding him or something like that.
Yeah. It doesn't. I mean, you don't have to do it as detailed as they did in Kills. It could have just been a simple just Michael's up and he's like walking around the house, and that's when the police arrive, kind of thing, to the house. And Loomis is still upstairs with Laurie, and that all that sort of happening. But yeah, it was a very messy sort of scenario, and I won't get into it, but ends they everything you liked about Laurie in that 2018 one, they kind of just forgot, I think, in ends.
Okay. All right. Like I said, I'm going to wait for it to be like on a streaming service I have that's free that I don't exactly have to pay for it. Or at least like even the $5 through Peacock. 'Cause I don't have Peacock, so I'm not going to spend that money just to watch one movie.
I don't even think it's available here in Australia. I think because I know it was released theatrically here, but it was, if it's streaming here, I don't even know where to find it.
So, like the only thing I know that's on right now is Peacock, but like I said, I don't have that, so I'd have to wait for it to like maybe even come on TV or something, and I just like DVR it pretty much and just watch it then. So, because like I said, I already have Netflix, HBO Max, and things like that. I'm not going to, even for a free trial, get Peacock just to watch one movie.
Yeah. Like, it would. I mean, it would. It's one of it. I wouldn't even bother like signing up for a month if I had to pay for it. Like even if there's other content and stuff I wanted to watch on there, I'd just be like, nah, I'll just keep waiting.
Yeah, pretty much that's where I am at this point. But like I said, it's like the only thing that I like about, at least when like with the 2018 sequel reboot, essentially is one of the issues I kind of had with the subsequent Halloween films, and that is I was not a fan of the revelation that Laurie and Michael are related.
Yeah,
I was not a fan of that. I was not a fan of that because if they think about again with the first movie, like it's
an added complication.
Yeah, it's an added complication. Plus, it doesn't exactly make sense with how the first movie sets it up, where it's like he doesn't go straight. He goes straight for his childhood home.
Yeah,
but he does like you don't see him looking for a sister. He if Laurie, like I said, if Laurie hadn't been the one to put the key down under the mat, like would he have focused on her? Probably not.
Yeah.
It's
that is one improvement I think is made in the reboots, is that they remove that family relation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I think it because that comes up in 2, doesn't it? Originally.
Yeah, that initially came up in 2. Yeah,
that's just one of those things where Carpenter, because he talks a little bit about it at the end of just before the credits sort of hit with the commentary on the first one. He got to basically he was held hostage to write 2, because that was the only way he was really going to get a lot of the money he was owed from the first movie, was to write the second one. And the way I understand it is he got through it by basically just drinking a 6-pack a night and writing, and because he got to the sit down and got to the page, and he was like, everything I'm doing is just a Xerox of the first movie. It's just I'm just repeating, like I can't. There's nothing else here unless I'm just repeating everything from the first movie. So I think he kind of just forced himself into a corner where he was like, I've got to figure something out that it makes it sort of either like a bit of a twist, or like there's a bit of a bit of a connection to keep Michael coming back to attack Laurie and stuff like that. But it was like, looking back on it, it's one of those things that's not needed.
It really, I don't think even like any sequels were needed, because again, the real connection between Laurie and Michael at that point was she's the one who got away.
Yeah.
You know, she was his main target, and she's escaped. She survived. So there really didn't have to be any deeper connection than that, other than a predator wanting to take down its prey.
Yeah. Finish the job kind of thing.
Yeah, basically finish the job essentially, which again doesn't really need a sequel because I think the first movie just as a standalone works, and even with the ambiguity of that final shot where it's somehow Michael has survived 6 bullets right to his chest. For me, it doesn't matter. Like, we don't need an explanation. Like, he's just out there.
Because we also don't know what kind of shape he's in either. Because he could be he might have crawled away from that spot where he fell, or he might have just gotten up and just walked off like nothing happened.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't really. It's that open ended. And that's like Carpenter said. He had that montage at the end where they places Michael has been or places Michael could be. It's like and he's not there. It's like, well, evil's everywhere now. It's gone from here, but it's not gone from the world, kind of thing. It's because I mean, I do like, if I'm gonna think of Halloween as a trilogy, I do like Halloween, Halloween 2, and then H2O. Just as like a.
I had to go back and watch H2O, but yeah.
So. It basically just ignores everything between Halloween 2 and then H2O, and it just comes 20 years after he attacked her for the first time, I think, or is it? Yeah, I think 20 years after he attacked her the first time in Halloween 1, and it's kind of the closest to the original, I think, in tone and Laurie's character. It's not. I don't think it's a bad movie. It's just one of those ones where it's a sequel. Like, it's not a great sequel, but it's a sequel.
Yeah.
But if they're going to go in like a timeline of Halloween, that's kind of my preferred timeline, is 1, 2, then H2O. And because Michael, if you just stop there, then spoilers, Michael dies at the end of it in kind of a definitive way. So it kind of does have a beginning, middle, and end for the franchise.
Okay, I could see that. As long as it's not Halloween Resurrection, because isn't that Buster Rhymes?
And that's the problem with it, because if your Halloween Resurrection follows H2O directly, and it's the way they kill Michael in H2O is pretty good, but then there's also I remember hearing the theory when I was a kid, like coming out of the theater to see H2O, people were already like, oh no, that wasn't really Michael where she cut his head off there. That was Michael swapped the paramedic, put his like clothes on the paramedic and swapped. And you can see Michael like walking away in the distance behind the ambulance. And then that's the paramedic that like gets his head cut off. And you're like, okay. But then I think they actually did use that in Resurrection as for how Michael got away.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh my God. But yeah, Resurrection is one of those movies where, all I remember from that movie is Michael Myers, Buster Rhymes fly kicking Michael Myers.
Yeah, pretty much.
The jump kick. And it's just like, did that just happen? Like,
that was my thought when I first saw it. It's just like, did he just say trick or treat, motherfucker, and like a snap kick Michael Myers' head? Pretty much.
Oh, that was.
But I think going back to the ambiguity of the first one, it's like goes back to when I was like, again with my top 10 discussion with Stieg, I mentioned the big problem I have with Psycho. As much as I love the movie Psycho, the original ending was supposed to be open-ended because Hitchcock wanted to end the film with you. I think like seeing the car being pulled out of the lake, and I think Anthony Perkins just staring at the screen, sort of a situation where it's like there's no explanation, nothing. It's just like he's now like straitjacketed, things like that. He's like in the loony bin and everything, and like, but the studio made Hitchcock add that little scenario with the psychiatrist spoon feeding everything to the audience. And even with my psychology major, which I would like normally find interesting, I'm like, it really doesn't work here because it's like you just take out all the scares, everything that would be potentially terrifying about Norman Bates because of like, what we've seen built up with that character and everything. Now it's like we're okay, like, it was not needed, but the studios didn't like the ending being so open-ended, and it doesn't ruin the film, but it ruins the ending of the film for me. And it's kind of the same way with Halloween, where it's like he could have ended it there, but because the studio got greedy and, like you said, held him hostage, saying, okay, like, it's like we have this pay for you, we have this money for you, but if you want it, you have to write a sequel, because they wanted to capitalize on the success of the first one. Then it's like, okay, fine. Then first, like, just 2 movies. Keep it at that. Maybe Halloween H2O, because they decided to do that 20 years later, roughly. But Halloween 2, it did not need. It did not need. Yeah, it did not need to go. It did not need to spawn a franchise. But that to me was like pure Hollywood studio greed at that point. Because now they saw a vehicle that could make them money. Michael Myers was that vehicle, so they just went with it. And it's like, I know, I mean, I think the second Scream is like, you like the second Scream, but for me, when I say this, I'm not saying I don't like the second Scream, but I'm saying the first Scream could have been a one-off as well, pretty much. It could have been a one-off movie. Yeah. Same thing with Halloween. But you have the mentality in Hollywood nowadays where you have to make everything a franchise or make everything a series, and it does not need to be. There's like nothing necessarily absolutely needs a sequel. Like the Joker movie does not need a sequel at all. But
that's kind of why I like Scream 2, is because it makes fun of all those slashers movies and stuff that keep going, but it's doing it itself. It's like, what can we do in the sequel? Like, we've done everything in the first one. Like, we've got to be bigger, bloodier, like more deaths, more, and it's like, no one's safe in this one. Anyone can be killed. Randy's saying that, and then if you've seen the movie, what happens to Randy?
Yeah,
it's kind of it's almost like the tongue-in-cheek humor of it happening is why I like that in Scream 2, and to a lesser degree in Scream 3 as well, because they kind of they had to change a lot of that movie and stuff because of circumstances that happened beyond their control in the real life. But yeah, it's definitely one of those ones where a lot of these movies, like, there's nowhere else to go after the first one. Anything else is really just a cash grab.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I agree with you. I do like the tongue-in-cheek nature to it, but I did like the ending to the first one where Randy's like walking up behind Gail and Sydney, and it's like, be careful, the killer always comes back, and like Sydney shoots her boyfriend, and he just pops up, and it's not my movie, and just like walks. Like that's like a perfect ending, pretty much. It's like, not in my movie.
Yeah, I mean, that I remember when I was a kid when Scream came out, and that was probably like my Halloween. If anyone like was a kid growing up watching Halloween, like growing up and then getting Scream, that was another one. It wasn't a expensive movie to make, but it went on to make quite a lot at the box office, and was one of those ones where, like, even like we're talking about Halloween Ends, like Scream, what is it now? Scream 5 that just came out like at the start of this year or whatever. That's another one where it didn't need to be made, and it probably did more damage to the franchise than good overall.
I'd say it definitely did more damage to the franchise, because where the whole premise is it's being a slight and a message about toxic fandom and bullshit that, and then like they had the audacity to have 4 Wes in the credits, and I'm like, Wes would not have done that. Wes understood that you don't piss off the people who are watching your movies, pretty much. Like, he understood that. So for them to have, that's I think what pissed me off more, was that audacity in the credits, like, for Wes.
And naming the character in the movie Wes, and then like where they have the party for Wes in the movie.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, this is weird. This is not what Wes meant.
No, it's not what Wes meant. And then without name dropping Ryan Johnson, but they reference the Knives Out guy and the eighth one, things like that. I was like how on the nose could you be at this point? Really, what the message you're going for in this film? I heard that in the movie, and I was like, I was in the theater, and I kind of put my head in my hands, oh Jesus Christ, this is where it's going.
Because I think he in the movie he's directing Stab 8.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, the Knives Out guy is directing Stab 8, and
just after he directed Episode 8 or whatever.
Yeah, I was like, oh god, yes. So that's where you're going. Okay, all right.
Yeah,
I get it.
Yeah, and it was fucking. I hated that movie.
Yeah, I hated it. I really regret spending money on it. That's like my one big regret is I spent money to see it in theaters.
Yeah. Because I don't like a lot of the times I don't have to pay to see the movies. Sometimes I'll get free tickets and stuff. But that was one of the ones that I actually did pay for, and I was just like, oh fuck.
Yeah, that was my feeling at the end. I was like,
I could have just waited like another week or so, and I probably would have got a free ticket to that one. And I was like, oh fuck that. I
wish I had waited a week and just got the word of mouth, and maybe I would have saved money that way.
Yeah, that too. I probably wouldn't have ended up going to see it. Oh, fucking hell, mate. Jesus
yeah, I know.
Christ,
I know. Because it's 5, and that's the only number Mazda knows, apparently.
Should do a double feature: Scream 5 and then Die Hard 5, Mozza, and see who passes out first from just pure boredom.
Yeah.
But we're nearly at the 2-hour mark. I was going to start to wind it up. I know Mara's probably got a lot to do on her Halloween day. Lots of trick-or-treating.
Well, trick-or-treating doesn't exactly start until 6 p.m. my time, but I do have to go out and run errands and things like that. Plus, I might sneak in a Twitch stream this afternoon because I don't know if I'll be able to go live tonight after trick-or-treating, because trick-or-treating goes from 6 to 8 p.m. So I don't know what energy I'll have afterwards.
Is there specific times for it?
Yeah, there is. Well, it depends on the neighborhood. It depends on the neighborhood and things like that.
Because there are rules for Halloween like this.
So I mean, as long as I can remember, at least growing up here, it's been those times. But yeah, like certain neighborhoods will do that, so that way it's it kind of tells people who might be out driving, hey, trick or treating's going on in this, this area, so they have to be careful, sort of situation. Versus that's another thing we didn't touch on with the Halloween movies is kids were just, as soon as school let out, kids were trick or treating, and I was like, that never happened. I had to wait 3 hours.
See, that's what I'd never pick that up.
Yeah,
watching the movie, because I just assume that as soon as school ends, the kids are just out viciously running around looking for candy as much as they can get.
Well, I think they also set the times for that way people who work and work a 9-to-5 job can get home, and so that way if they do have candy for the kids, and because this is 1978 was still roughly a time when there was housewives and things like that, so there would be someone home. But nowadays, in the more current climates where you have 2 working parents, and you want to make sure that it's if someone wants to be home for the trick-or-treating, they at least set it up where it's late in early enough that's not too late, but late enough that people can get home from work and be ready for the trick-or-treaters. So it kind of works out that way. So yeah.
No, that's cool. As I was saying, I wish we had more of it here. It seems like a really fun thing. But I mean, there is it's a lot different here, because a lot of the problems, it's getting close to summer here, so it doesn't get dark until about probably 7:30, nearly 8 o'clock at night. So it's not great running around as a kid in a outfit while the sun's still shining and it's nearly 30 degrees.
Yeah, pretty much.
Celsius, that is.
So if there's one last thing I'll say about the movie, and again, this is a gripe on my part. So it's a personal thing for me, nothing to slight the movie or anything. But, and Steve can attest to this. I'm like my mom. I don't like seeing animals get killed in movies, sort of situation. Yeah. I'm not saying it doesn't happen in real life. I'm just saying I just don't like seeing it in films. And for me, I don't consider everything like that gratuitous violence, but for me, it's like if you can remove it from the plot and it changes nothing about the storyline, to me that's comes off as gratuitous. So when they show the little girl's dog being well, you see the bottom half of the dog, but you know what Michael Myers is doing to the dog pretty much.
Yeah.
To me, like when it still gets to that point in the movie here, I'm like, I mean, he's stalking these girls. He's already killed his sister. We know he's batshit crazy, so we don't need to see him. It doesn't exactly add anything necessarily to the plot. So for me, personally, not a slight against the movie in any way. I still love it. I'm like, he could have removed that, maybe saved a little bit of money, not had the dog in the movie, and maybe used it for something else sort of situation.
It was interesting how they shot that scene as well. They just it was just the dog trainer. They just shot the camera. They slowed down they put in slow-mo, dropped the frame rate, and it was the guy just holding the dog, and then it looks like the dog's legs go limp, but it's actually the guy's just putting the dog down onto the ground.
Well, yeah,
but it just looks like, because the dog's like sort of preparing its legs to touch the ground again, but it just looks like the dog's legs just go limp and drop. It's really effective for like how they did it. But yeah, it's I'm kind of the same. I'm like, where animals, they sort of, some of the time it's like it's attack dog or whatever, and it's part of the plot sort of thing, like it's, but a lot of the time, yeah, they do like kind of like the dog in Jaws, like Tippett at the start. Like you don't see it happen, but Jaws takes the dog off the beach when it's swimming in the water, and you just see the stick floating there. It's kind of like, yeah, it doesn't really do anything for the plot, but it's just one of those, it's kind of designed to tug at the heartstrings of the audience a bit.
Well, it definitely tugs on my heartstrings. Like I said, I'm like my mom pretty much. So I'm like, oh, like it's kind of like that meme where it's like, with like Kanye West on like one side, like just like the stoic face pretty much, and on the other side is like a baby or a little little kid crying. It's like me when humans die in movies. It's like Kanye West face pretty much. Like me when an animal dies in a movie pretty much. It's kind of how I am.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Because yeah, like you feel a lot more sorry for the dogs than you do some of the people in this movie.
Yeah, pretty much. So.
Yeah, but
even in this film, again, it's like you still feel sorry for the people because like it's before the tropes, so it's like it's before the stereotypical loose girls, before the stereotypical jock, before the stereotypical
and that's the other thing, like
things like that. You still feel sorry for them. You know they're going to die, but you still feel sorry for them because
they do a good job making you feel sympathetic for them by building up the characters at the start of the movie, like having the interactions that they have and everything. They're not just sort of fodder characters. They are characters in their own right in the movies, in a way.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's one of those things that it's a hallmark of John Carpenter. Like the small characters are still have heart and a role in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think anyone does. Gravy. Yeah, the start of John Wick's rough.
Yeah, it is rough, and I've seen all 3 John Wick movies. I know I'm going to definitely see the 4th one when it comes out, and the 2nd and 3rd one. Each time I've gone to go see it, my first question out of my mom's mouth, whenever I was like, the movie is over, it's like, it's like, so what happened to his dog? Because we know he gets a new dog at the end of the first one. It's like, is the dog alive? Is the dog safe? I'm like, don't worry, Mom, the dog's safe. Don't worry, Mom, the dog's safe. I would tell you if something happens to the dog.
Yeah.
So.
No worries, Skirmitar. Thanks for being here. Yeah, it's. I mean, apart from recently, it's a movie I hadn't seen in a long time too, and I've always had respect for it because it's a Carpenter film, but I hadn't had the complete reverence for it always that I have grown to have for it recently. And if you haven't seen it, I suggest checking it out, especially the first one. Like if you don't want to continue with the series or whatever, but the first one is well worth checking out. And yeah, so on that note, we'll wrap it up here. I want to thank Mara for being here. And also I did mention Lethal messaged me before. He had something come up. He wasn't able to make it, but I'll try and get Lethal on again, and we'll maybe talk about maybe when Mara sees it as well. We'll talk about the new the reboots and how that sort of left Halloween in the sort of state it might be in for the foreseeable future. But with that, we'll wrap it up here. And thank you, Mara, for being here. You can find Mara on her YouTube channels and her Twitch channel. I've got the YouTube channels in the description, but you're Jade Fire on Twitch, are you?
Yeah, Jade_Fire on Twitch.
Yeah.
So.
She does great streams. She might stream Metal Gear Solid 5 again eventually if you keep pressuring her.
Yeah, every time you come in, it's like, hey, Metal Gear Solid is a great series to get into. And I'm like, fuck, I'm trying to. So I'll work it in. I will work it in.
Yeah, and
I will work it in.
I have to tell you this all the time. It's I'm the only real clone of Big Boss. There is no Solid Snake. There's no Solidus. It's just Liquid, and that's just the facts. So follow Jade on Twitch. Her YouTube, both her YouTube channels are in the description. She does videos a couple of times a week usually, and she has a couple of streams a week usually, and a sort of like a special monthly. It's monthly now, isn't it? The top 10.
Well, the top 10 was like always monthly, but I'm making Cringe Factory monthly as well because I already talked about Cringe on Talk Nerdy to Us whenever. So I've like, it would be like 8 times a month if I were to keep Cringe Factory at like every Wednesday. Yeah, too much cringe. I can't do it. So this Wednesday will be the once a month for the Cringe Factory, and then the subsequent 2 Wednesdays will be the Alien and then the Aliens discussion.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So
if anybody wants to partake in that, like in the chats, you have a little over a week now to get at least the first Alien movie in. So
so if you liked Mara here talking about Halloween, you get to hear her talking about some other movies, some real cool movies as well coming up soon with Alien and Aliens. And I know she did a Predator 1 and 2 stream not too long ago, about a month or a couple of months ago, two months ago or something.
Roughly, and that's the reason why I'm splitting it. Because
yes, I know that one went
4.5 hours.
Yeah.
4.5 hours. Like I can't do that.
I was watching and you were, I think you're up to like 2.5 hours, and you were still on the first movie. And I was like,
on the first one.
There's another movie to go, and then there was it's gonna be
that,
for a while.
That was my thoughts when I got to the 2.5 mark. I was like, fuck, we gotta talk about the second one.
Yeah.
I didn't think that through initially.
No, yeah.
So that's like lesson learned. Alien a week from this Wednesday, and then Aliens 2 weeks from this Wednesday. So I'm splitting it up so that way it's like the first movie and then the second movie. So the stream shouldn't be that long. So
excellent. So guys, if you're not subscribed yet, I'm pretty sure most of the people here would be already, but if you're watching this later on or whatever and you're not subscribed to Jade Shadow, you have to do it now. And with that, I've got a stream planned for next week. It's gonna be not a movie one. It's gonna be one of my new shows. It's called Liquid Blake's Live Matters, and it's gonna be sort of like a DC and Marvel mega stream with all the news that's happened lately. And then I'll get back to doing some more movie streams, and I'll probably be maybe The Frighteners, but I know Trey's going to be reviewing The Warriors soon, so I thought that might be a cool movie to talk about too. So that could be on the horizon, but stay tuned. If you're not subscribed here, subscribe, hit the bell. You'll find out when things are coming. And I think I just got enough subscribers to unlock community posts as well, so I can try and let people on the channel know actually what's happening through YouTube now instead of having to tweet it and stuff like that. So that might be pretty good. So with that, we'll end it here. Thanks everyone for being here. Thank you for the chat. A lot of the people that came, Skirmitar, Gigawatt, Gravy, Mozza, Biggles was here before. We had Miss Martin Muses, and we had a bot. If I'm missing anyone, I'm sorry. Raging Rhino was here. And Jock and Legends of the Braid Bard, of course. So with that, thank you all, and we'll see you next time. Peace.
Bye.